All right, folks, joining me now is Brad Freeman. Brad is the author of the Stock Market Newsletter. He's joining me today for a one-on-one conversation to talk all things Celsius. I see these drinks everywhere. Brad, thanks for being here, man.
Thanks so much for having me. Excited to dig in.
Yeah, and I think the growth of the brand Celsius really came to light for a lot of people last year, 2023. Pretty killer sales. Even anecdotally, like I was saying, it's tough to walk anywhere without seeing the Celsius brand either on social media or at your local convenience store. We did see revenue growth double in just the last year alone, but earlier this year, some signs of revenue only growing a little over 2%. First off, is the Celsius hype over? And what do you make of the sales numbers we've seen so far year to date?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to grow at 100% year over year forever. Law of large numbers definitely kicks in, and they've had a lot of support over the last call a couple of years from Pepsi, phenomenal distribution partner, one of the best supply chains on the planet in terms of consumer packaged goods. So really leaning on them to, nurture these relationships with the distributors, help them distribute in the most optimal manner. We've seen that on the bottom line and margins really looking a lot better, which we can dig into later. But I think it's a matter of just a brand that really stormed onto the scene along the same timeline as when money was free and sloshing around in everyone's pockets and everything was amazing and we were all consuming well above our means. And I think now we're seeing somewhat of a normalization. And I think we can dig into a little later. There's Nielsen scanner data that is pointing to more sequential slowing for Celsius. That is already configured into expectations and fully assumed to be the case for sell side or for analyst expectations, but still growth is slowing. We've seen the stock give back some gains, still a phenomenal performer over the last few years, but you are absolutely right. Slowing is the theme right now over the last few quarters.
Yeah, we can get more into the stock performance. It is down about 4% or so year to date. It's had a wild run. I mean, I don't know to what degree you'd consider it a super volatile stock, but it's had these wild ups and then these big swing down kind of corrections. Is there evidence, I wonder, Brad, that consumers' personal own economic situation may be sort of deteriorating their spending and therefore having an impact on, let's say some basic discretionary purchases, which might be that extra energy drink or two a week? Is that something that you're looking at as a potential explanation for those slowing sales?
Yeah, and I think there's evidence in two places where we can look. First, the overall industry for energy drinks is shrinking as of last quarter. So Celsius is still taking market share. They are still taking a bigger piece of the pie. That pie just isn't as delicious or compelling as it has been over the last several quarters. But the other area to look, just general consumer discretionary. Starbucks is struggling. Lululemon is struggling. Nike is struggling. McDonald's is struggling. All of these iconic brands that have been rock solid for several years are all struggling. And a lot of what they're doing to combat those struggles, we've seen from a few of those that I just mentioned. We've seen from Target and from Walmart. Just really trying to drive affordable deals for all their increasingly price conscious consumers. Really trying to provide them more obvious value and really help them and hold their hand while everyone kind of moves into a new or a newer or a different, maybe I should say, world in which money is not so free and easy and flowing. So yeah.
Brad, what's interesting to me about some of the names you just mentioned, Walmart comes to mind, is that you've seen companies like that recently say, we are seeing more six-figure income earners shop at our places for value than we ever have before. It's not just Walmart, it's a few of those other food names as well. What do we know about the sort of average demographic or consumer base of a product like Celsius? Who's buying it?
Yeah, so they're very young. So I think that's an important point to mention. And just because they are so young, it does lean a bit. I wouldn't call it so when we talk about credit or other things with subprime and prime, so it's a little less neat to kind of sort people into those buckets. But I would say that Celsius is more along the lines of a Nike consumer rather than a Lululemon consumer. Just to kind of offer more context. But they are very young, and when you're younger, just generally speaking, there are always exceptions to this rule. Obviously, you are not as affluent. I'm 27. Hopefully I'll be a lot more wealthy when I'm 57. And just when you're catering to these younger consumers, you are a bit more vulnerable to these macro cycles and a bit more vulnerable to sensitive changes in consumer spending habits. So they're definitely not, I wouldn't put them in that dollar store category at all like that. I wouldn't even put them in the Walmart category, but they aren't really catering to this extremely affluent demographic, like a Lululemon, maybe even like a Revolve group, if you're familiar with them, they do skew less affluent for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. About 60% of Celsius revenue comes from, you mentioned before, the distribution network through Pepsi. Talk to me more about either the opportunities or the challenges and risks being so closely associated with a brand like that.
Yeah, I mean, in my mind, and I know this definitely is not an original idea. I've borrowed it from many other bright people. It seems somewhat inevitable that Pepsi will eventually just buy Celsius and tuck it into that wonderful umbrella of brands that they've built up over the last several decades. But Pepsi really did help them storm onto the scene a little bit faster. Really did help them move into this national distribution network where they could really tap into existing capacity and help Pepsi take better advantage of their deadweight loss too, and make them more profitable. Really to give them this darling brand that everyone wanted, and to really get them in their foot in the door for inventory resets, and meetings with executives at large chains to be taken more seriously, and to become this company that's now. I believe they might have been the market share leader in Amazon last quarter. They're either first or second. I can't really remember off the top of my head. But really, I do think Pepsi accelerated and shrunk the learning curve and shrunk the growing pain curve for them just by being this dynamite established consumer packaged goods brand that they could lean on. But on the flip side, Pepsi might have gotten a little bit too excited about Celsius's growth as well. As we've seen, commentary was last quarter. They said in an investor conference it was between 20 and 30 million, I believe, that Pepsi is getting a bit more cautious on inventory repurchasing and resets. And trying to get a little bit leaner in how much Celsius they're keeping in their own distribution network. So for next quarter, that is going to continue costing them. I do think it was between 20 and 30 million. I don't have the number off the top of my head, but it was something like that, which was about as expected based on sell side revenue estimates not really budging after that news came out. And yeah, so that's been impacting them over the last few quarters. It's going to impact them next quarter, and then they're hoping to get to more of a normal inventory level environment during the second half of the year.
What do other potential impacts look like from competitors? C4, Ghost, Starbucks has its own version of an energy drink. Coca-Cola's got an energy drink product. What does that competition look like in terms of market share for the company, you think?
Yeah, I just saw, I can't remember what the brand was, but Travis Kelce and Livy Dune doing some kind of influencer collaboration for another new startup. And it's interesting how the disruptor becomes the disruptee very quickly. And I think Lululemon is figuring that out right now too. I say as a shareholder, and Alo and Vori really having a lot of success. But it is a hyper competitive environment. Red Bull and Monster are still the two gorillas in the room, and they are very well capitalized, and that will continue to be the case. And like you said, Starbucks is really leading into this sugar-free niche and taste change that Celsius has done so well with younger consumers looking for alternatives. I mean, a lot of people will argue how much healthier sucralose is versus cane sugar, but Starbucks is really leaning into a line of sugar-free energy drinks that they're hoping to kind of extend day parts, help them become a more formidable competitor, because the energy drink category still is very compelling, even if it's taking a brief pause right now. And I mean, you have other players like Dutch Bros who absolutely kill it with their line of energy drinks, more established on the West Coast. So it's a very fiercely competitive field, just like most consumer packaged good categories are. When you can tweak a formula a little bit, you can tweak some branding a little bit, but aside from that, your marketing and your go-to-market just matters dearly, and that's going to continue to be the case for Celsius. It's going to continue seeing the Bangs and all of these different energy drink brands pop up. That's not going to slow down, and it's going to be on them. It's going to be their onus to really just overcome this, like they've done so admirably thus far, just with explosive market share gains. But it's not like that the rest of the field is just going to pack up and go away because Celsius is winning. There will be more new entrants. There are still two very rich and very well capitalized and incumbents that they're taking market share from. But you never know if that's going to continue. There's always risks, the competitive landscape souring, and it's on leadership to make sure that doesn't happen. Accelerator,
By the way, that's the name of the drink with Travis Kelce and Livy Dunn. Accelerator. You're right. I saw those social media ads all over the place too. I totally forgot. So that's another good example there of potential competitors there in terms of market share. Now, Celsius dealt with a class action lawsuit last year, ended in, I think, almost an $8 million payout to customers with regards to misleading ingredient labeling. This gets down to like just basic regulatory issues. Do you sense legal trouble, more legal trouble, either for brands like this or others like it, And how is its healthy branding? It's healthy. I'm using air quotes for people who can't see me. The idea of these being healthy products, that sort of branding at risk for Celsius?
Yeah, I mean, there's not. I mean, Kava is dealing with microplastic lawsuits and all that kind of stuff, which I mean, will continue to be maybe a thorn in its side, but we'll see how that develops. But and for Celsius, I mean, Monster and Red Bull are not healthy, but they're and I say as a health food expert, obviously, there are people who know way more about this than I do, but just reading their ingredients labels, it's a bit of an adventure. It does read like a science experiment more than something that maybe should be put in someone's body. And Celsius, they have really hammered home this idea of athletic and wholesome and holistic energy drinks and marketing and the sugar-free lifestyle. And again, I can't really comment and criticize what sucralose versus cane sugar just because it's really not what I do and more of a financial brain than a nutritional brain. But for Celsius, it is very important for them to maintain this branding because I do think that's what's been so successful here. And when you read Celsius's ingredient label, it is very long too. There are many ingredients that I cannot pronounce, and I have no idea what this means. And you have some lawsuits, I believe, like the tea extract ingredient that's in there, that's in some of their ingredients labels that has been leading to some liver stuff, and for some patients drinking a lot of it, a ton of it. That's important context. But to me, these very small anecdotes only become concerning if they become more structural. If it's and hopefully this never happens because it'd be people not being healthy, but a lot more than one or two or three. It needs to be 1 or 2 or 3,000 just for it really to become concerning from an actual product safety perspective. But from a brand marketing perspective, when Celsius is just clinging to this, we're healthier than everyone else. That can really create some noise and some volatility and some risk when there are these headlines coming out, when there are these lawsuits coming out that, well, maybe there's no sugar, but there's some other stuff in it that could be maybe just as bad for you. I'm not saying that's the case. I'm just saying that is a risk here when they've done so well to nurture this energy drink persona and niche and culture of we're healthier and we're for athletes and fit people.
Just about out of time, so last one quick if you can. The company's global expansion, France, Australia, New Zealand, your thoughts on their strategy around the world?
Yeah, early days. It's been a slow grind so far, but we were told to expect that it would be a slow grind, that they wanted to go one market at a time, really establish a localized marketing playbook and product market fit with all the gyms and gym chains in different countries. And I think they're still in that process. So it's still a very small piece of revenue. I don't have the number off the top of my head. Probably should have pulled up a press release before I opened this up, but that's okay. So I do think we see. I don't want to sound too American here, but when there are dominant U.S. brands, they generally translate pretty well across overseas. I mean, a lot of the brands we've spoken about thus far are great examples, whether it be quick service restaurant chains or apparel or other energy drink categories. So there's really no reason to believe it can't be as successful as it is in the U.S. But I do think it'll be a slow, maybe frustratingly slow for some people grind, just because they're not going to go storm the world with Celsius and launch in 20 or 30 markets next year. They are going to go one at a time, maybe two at a time, and really run the exact same playbook that served them so well in the U.S. But that took them several years really to get this explosion in revenue and profit that we're seeing right now.
Brad Freeman is the author of the Stock Market Nerd newsletter. Brad, where can people find your work?
Stockmarketnerd.com.
My man, thanks for taking the time. Good to have you.
Great to be here. Thanks so much for having me and have a great day.